Today we have Robert Pierce, Carlos Costa, here for our interview, our special interview to Robert Pierce, to whom I thank the opportunity to answer some of our questions to SIGDOCers this year, 2021. Rob Pierce is a longtime board member from SIGDOC, since I entered SIGDOC. Rob Pierce was already long committed to SIGDOC. Robert is a content designer for IBM Watson Health from several years now, and we thank you, Rob, for accepting the invitation and the challenge to share a little bit what it is, a content designer. And thank you.
Thank you, Rob, to be here, and at least virtually. And how is your activity related to what is so-called technical communication or technical writing, or eventually what you may suggest that may be more fitted to your activity right now?
And hi all. So TechCom, technical communication, information development, technical writing, content design, content development, they're all kind of sort of maybe the same thing, or they certainly are tangential and connect. So I have a computer science background with lots of writing experience and technical writing experience, primarily for software developers doing API documentation. Much of my career, that's what I did, is I worked closely with developers and did TechCom, technical writing for developers for APIs and libraries and products. 5 years ago, I moved into Watson Health and moved into the design organization. And the VP of design, he didn't know what information development was. I had to tell him what it meant. And so he called it content design because with his design perspective. And I broadened it out to content design and development. And actually, in our company, I was kind of influential in rebranding the role in design as practices, user research, visual design, interaction design, and content design as a practice in design. And why does that matter? Because it's the words and the other modalities of information for users in their user experience. So technical communication for me now is connecting the dots, connecting the different people in product development, in design, in marketing, in education, in support, who are all creating content and ensuring and advocating for the users for having the right content in the right places at the right times for them.
Thank you. Okay, so regarding that, in your opinion, what do you think it was the evolution of technical communication and content design? What is the evolution until now?
So I would say the evolution, I'm reaching across my desk over here. There used to be a company called Digital Equipment, and then they were bought by Compaq Computer. Nobody knows probably what that was. Yeah. And that's all part of Hewlett Packard now. There's this book here, and it's pretty thick, and it's C++ foundation classes for a transaction router that actually was used for one of the major stock exchanges. And it's a big book. It's hard copy. The evolution was eventually that thing became available online as a help system. And that's fine. So that's an API reference. And the evolution is the developers who might be using those APIs, some might actually still like having a book. Some might really want a PDF file online that they can search. Others might want, more granular, specific API doc with examples to try it out and test it and see examples in their user experience and in their development environment. And so the evolution really is more and more in-app content, like have the content right where they are actually doing the work and make it available for them, or make it linked from where they're at so that they don't have to click away. As much as possible, keep the user right in the user experience. So the evolution, I think, is largely that. Don't have people clicking to multiple places to try to find the thing they need to read or listen to or watch. And again, that's part of the evolution as well. A book is all, it might have some images in it, but videos are highly effective. Tours, walkthroughs, a tool called WalkMe is an example of clicking through in-app modals to learn about or understand how to do something. So the evolution is more and more right in the application and right in the user experience. That's how I see it. And even just for training materials, if possible, again, try to have it as immersive and visual and interactive. So more interactivity, because for a user to get what they want, meaning modalities. A video is different than a book, certainly. And so let me have options so that I can get the content the way I want it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. And as you mentioned, there is lots of skills that professional in this area must have. But in what extent, what are the role of the university?
I really think skills such as teamwork and collaboration are critical, and then real world use cases. So have experiences of teaming and collaborating to produce something tangible, so that your learning isn't all theory, there's practice involved. In technical communication, and I'll use that phrase, I won't use the 6 other phrases that mean the same thing. You don't do that, or you shouldn't do that content creation in a vacuum, meaning who do you need to work with to be able to effectively create the content for the intended user? And who is that intended user? And do you have a full picture of the collection of intended users? So who might know that stuff? A product manager, sales folks, pre-sales services people out in the field who interact with clients? Do you know who your customer support liaison is? Who is the lead tester of your product? Is anybody testing the documentation that you're creating in app? Who else? The developers, certainly. Maybe there are people in, like in our company, there's a whole global services, people, selling, working with clients. Collaboration, and partly before collaboration, there's networking, right? So it's all elements of communication. So in terms of a communication strategy, these I think are critical skills in learning that you're going to apply in the real world when you're out there, that you have to work with an array of people in different roles, personalities, backgrounds, lived experiences. I think these are huge areas of experimenting and learning more about the cross-functional and multidisciplinary world that you'll be creating tech content in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I also think, well, probably you think that those soft skills are more important than some of the hard skills.
Well, I'm glad you say that, right? I mean, certainly the hard skills, no, that's a given, right? Like quality writing, consistency, terminal, all of the style guide pillars, and then as well, fluidity and tools. Do you know how to create a video? Do you know how to writing a script for a video, or actually a chatbot? It's very different writing than writing for a database administrator. So I think having an array of different writing audiences and style types as well, certainly, and tools.
Yes.
Very interesting. Thank you. Is it possible for you to make some predictions of what do you think it will be the future of a content designer?
I mean, in many parts of software development, and in some ways writing is part of software development, because if the content is part of the product, and I do believe it is, then you should view it's part of the product, right? So it's being planned, designed, developed, and tested, and delivered and deployed, and then you're collecting feedback in various ways, right? To understand, you're measuring its effectiveness, and there's multiple ways to do that. But the future is going to be, I think, more and more recognizing of our diversity, meaning, so one size doesn't fit all. The market in almost anything it bears it out. One size doesn't fit all. So similarly, content, what are you showing me? Why are you showing me this? And always providing users to give feedback, but not just let them give feedback to see that it's being acted on, so that their voices are heard. So more interactivity on that. If I'm going to provide feedback, I'm going to be more invested in it if I get a response and actually see that I'm actually affecting change. Maybe just for me, or maybe I have a bigger, higher purpose. And so I think that kind of communication between creators and consumers will continue to grow and evolve. That's probably the biggest area.
Like the use of networks, right? It's not just a one-way communication or one-way. Yeah, it's very interesting.
The other piece I think is sharing. So if let's just say I'm a team lead of a big corporation, and I'm using the help system from company X, and there's a 3,400 page manual, but there are 23 pages that are really useful for what I'm doing. Make it really easy for me to aggregate those 23 whatever help topics or pages and make them available for the 50 people who report to me, and they're going to need them as well, or they'll benefit by it. I just gave you an example internally, but do that as well externally. Make it really easy to share when appropriate.
So thank you very much for your participation.
Good day to you all. So today we have Dr. Constance Alex as our interviewee. She holds a PhD in technical communication and rhetoric from Texas Tech University. And Dr. Constance, she started her career by teaching in University of El Paso, Texas, and later on she worked in education publishing. So right now she's in corporate communication industry.
Thank you, Manuel. I would like to thank Dr. Constance to be here. How is your activity related to technical communication?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you to the SIGDOC community. Thank you to both of you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here and be able to speak about some of the experience I've had along my career. So your first question, how is your activity related to technical communication? Where do I start? So let me just set the stage just a little bit. So technical communication is such a wide-ranging field that many professions can benefit from. Basically, the knowledge to connect and to communicate with their target audiences. For example, that may be engineers, technologists, doctors, nurses, repair and safety staff on oil rigs, in mines, at airports. I know I'm speaking to an audience who understands this very well. But there are so many places where humans depend or interact with technology that it's just an incredibly important field. Why? Well, because this type of communication has to have certain characteristics. It has to be easy to understand. We all know that. It has to be absolutely accurate. That goes in technical communication and specifically in technical writing, which I will not dive into so much. And it has to distill complex technological processes down to what's essential in writing, graphically, in video, and audio, and new modes yet to come. We don't know. It has to address very particular audiences. We have to understand what the audience know and what they don't know. It has to do this intelligently, safely, accurately, and especially about the future of particular technologies such as artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, which are not only technologies but also communication technologies once we produce content for them and address certain topics and audiences. Just as a little example, think of Elon Musk on Twitter. One wrong word can send the stock market tumbling or rise. In the worst case, however, any miscommunication can harm people if not done with care and the subject matter expertise. So back to the question, I haven't forgotten the question, how my particular professional journey connects to technical communication. My first job in college, I was a student, was that of a technical translator, and that was German to English for a doctor who needed to translate research papers from German into English. Easier said than done. The work was really fascinating, and it involved in vitro fertilization. I didn't have any particular subject matter expertise, but the general belief was if somebody speaks well enough English, they surely can do this. So that it was exciting. It was also humbling. But what it really did, it gave me an idea what it takes to be a technical communicator or technical translator from one language to the other, but still in the subject matter. So what did I do with this doctor? I had to meet many times and ask him millions of questions. And he said, but it's clear. I said, no, it's not clear. I need to understand it. So how can I translate correctly all parts of this paper, the research question, the literature review, the methodology, the description of processes, results, conclusion, and so forth, and research gaps. So definitely in over my head. But I knew I could write, but it needed improvement. It needed development. And I understood that I want to be at the center of technology and human development. It doesn't have to be as literal as in vitro fertilization. It could be anything else, and that has happened over my career, but it was an amazing start. So ultimately, this experience confirmed that I was on the right track in the field of technical translation and communication. Later, I added applied English linguistics. My first language is German. My second is English, and then Spanish, and somewhere down the line, Portuguese, which I'm learning right now. It's a whole other story. So since then, my career path has taken some turns, but never away from the goal to create content that would invite general audiences into the world of technology. and help them use communication technologies to this broader audience. So let me get started. My role as Technology and Innovation Communications Manager for Dell's Chief Technology Officer was my first role in high tech in corporate communication. And I had this amazing responsibility to translate what the Chief Technology Officer wanted to do, and his team, obviously, a team of futurists wanted to do, and basically package it for internal audiences to get budget and resources, because the Office of the Chief Technology Officer looks out 3, 5, sometimes 10 years into the future. These big companies are developing these technologies, not when it's time to have them. Everybody is, I'm 100% aware of that, but we have to look out into the future. What's going to be what customers need? What does the world need? And how can we best satisfy this? So now we have to sell this. And I say sell in a way that is communicated, because somebody has to understand it, package it, and then target it to the audience. And there's a difference between an internal audience of the CFO who gives the money versus customers who want to understand what the company is in the future. Should they invest in the technology of this company now or later? So, so it was right in the middle of technical communication. What we did at the same time is we introduced, this was back in the 90s, we introduced the first company blog. So not only were we communicating technology content, but also using technology to communicate this content. We created back on SharePoint, started offering blog software back then. So maybe some of you will remember. So the stakeholders, again, were wide variety. So external stakeholders, customers, standards bodies that we were part of, government agencies, the military. So it was a job that I absolutely loved, with a lot of responsibility of getting it right. And again, coming back to technical communication, that's what it was. That's what it was for me. Later on, I moved on to be the lead communicator for Dell's president of sales. Very different role, very different audience. Now the salespeople were the audience to translate the technology vision of the sales president to the sales force. So that's when social selling started. And we as technical communicators had a big role in figuring out the technology and how to talk the rhetoric inside this technology. Extremely important. So then after that, I moved on to become digital marketing director. So once again, I was communicating content in technology, this time in a 100% digital environment, where we had thought leadership content, technology content, predictions, technology predictions, so all these kinds of things. How do you best do this for different audiences? So we had to, well, this was our role to gain and keep customers because they believed that on the technology side, the company could help them. How do you do that? You explain the technology in easy, consumable ways. We call it snackable bites sometimes, small bites that still give the audience the gist of what we're doing. So then I moved on to Cisco, and that was a very interesting role because at this point, the high-tech industry, the communicators were figuring out that no matter what you communicate, it's technical, but it has to be a story. It has to be a good story. So for the very first time, they created in 2019 a group of digital storytelling. So I was very fortunate to be able to join that group of digital storytellers at Cisco and really figure out how do we stop giving information and start telling a story. What story matters to our customers is not what matters to the company who sells the product. It solves a problem, it solves a challenge for the customer. And remember, all customers really are companies that rely on the technology to succeed. So that was a very, very interesting year. And then the pandemic hit. Yeah. So everything I've done up to this point became even more important. And you all can probably attest to that. Anybody who has been professionally involved in communication, technical communication throughout the pandemic knows what it means when crisis mode comes in and you all of a sudden have to combine this with crisis communication and onboard new customers and employees onto video conferencing software, onto a home network. So it's almost like we all were trained for this moment that's happening right now. So the storytelling, the technical know-how, and the rhetoric we are currently, right now in this moment, using is absolutely critical. So now, that was throughout the pandemic. In my last venture, now I live in beautiful Portugal, and I have become a digital nomad. So again, drawing on everything that I have done in the past, I'm now a strategy consultant for an education e-learning company. We are creating content for Pennsylvania school district. This is educational content, but the company is also delivering the infrastructure and the content management system and all those things. So I have, as you can see, had very diverse jobs, but all of them have drawn on my skills and abilities as a technical communicator. That said, you never stop learning. And I think in the next question, we may address that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Constance. It's quite a handful of practice and training and knowledge that you experience throughout all your professional different roles in different organizations. So piggybacking in your in your last sentence, so what do you think it would be the extent of the university in terms of the technical communication profession? In what extent the university is important to that, and if it would be possible to you to make some predictions, what do you think it will be in the future? What it will be the future of technical communication?
Yeah, I mean, to not keep anybody hanging on their seats, the future is great. So let me tell you why I think that for technical communication. So you heard me go through my different jobs and all the learning and keeping up to date in the fields and the technology I had to do, with my basis in technical translation, in applied linguistics, and in technical communication and rhetoric. And because one thing is for sure, you can never stop learning and improving your skills. And I think we all know this, and that's why everybody is here in this conference, because that's what a major driver of the field is, to never stop learning. And I mentioned the global pandemic before. So if we just look at this, what's going on in the world, it touches literally every person on earth. When could we ever have said that before? It changed the need for communication technologies. Yeah. It augmented the need for experts overnight. I remember being at Cisco, and we had to get entire cities online. There was a great example of the city of Turin in Italy, who were hit really hard. And technology, work with the government, the city government, and technology companies was what helped them get through this. But I digress a little bit. So you can see how it's everywhere. These new technologies, new application of technologies that we've been using, huge learning needs for employers, employees, huge need for the field of technical communication. It's up to us, I want to say, and to the wonderful teachers and professors you have here, to move the field forward and create roles within the profession to meet the needs of the future. And now we can truly say, for the world, for the benefit of every citizen on this earth. So a couple of examples. So remote learning and remote working have exploded. It will not go back. Yeah. Some companies, I know some companies will say, maybe some universities say, okay, now we've done a little bit of this work from home, but traditional managers maybe want most of their staff back. However, that doesn't mean it's happening. The evolution of going digital will move on. It just got a huge kickstart, and it went from 0 to 100 in a few seconds. I think that's what we can compare it to. And what's happening? Digital nomad villages are popping up in Portugal. I think had the first one in Madeira. We'd love to visit that. And what do we need there to set this up? What do we need to make all this function and communicate to people that this works? And we need technical communication. So work from home or from anywhere requires brand new communication styles for companies, for managers, for teams. All of a sudden sitting at home, like, what do we do? Not only styles, but also nascent technologies, or those that have yet to be invented. It's going to be a boom. And it's time to do research on that type of rhetoric needed to communicate via these new technologies. There's a huge white space out there for research. And I'm only talking about one particular field within technical communications. Professor Carlos and Professor Manuela have different fields, and they could talk just as much what's needed in their particular specialties. Or think about this: how will innovation happen when people don't share ideas at the water cooler or across cube walls or in conference rooms? About the innovation necessitates, and research shows that collaboration, it necessitates collaboration. People need to work together, bounce ideas off each other across functional teams in companies. Otherwise, innovation doesn't happen in a lab with a single person. It relies heavily on social capital, serendipitous moments between people in random conversations. But now we have no physical space, shared space to do this. Quick look back at social capital. I have done research myself, actually, proving that internal communication technologies like chat, like internal Twitter applications and blogs can actually aid in the formation of social capital. And that was done 10 years ago, that research. And I don't know how many people listened. Now everybody's listening to this kind of communication that can facilitate problem solving speed or problem solving period. So entire industries need to adapt to a new way of working, communicating, and even sharing spare time, or even building team activities. Team building activities. How do you bring a team together that's so dispersed now across the globe? The change is rampant. Learning lags behind on all ends. We know that. Infrastructure lags behind. What is actually needed? Basic connectivity in many places lags behind. But also, I want to say, these things you think of maybe of certain countries in mind, but think of Germany. There was big problems during the pandemic. Continue with getting schools online, with getting people connected. You don't think of Germany as a country who wouldn't need a lot of help, but fact is they do. So, but also technical communication will need to reinvent itself constantly. For every engineer and inventor, a technical communicator is needed to bring an idea to life for an audience and to help the world understand the risk of not moving forward. So basically, yes, I'm coming like sort of to the end here. It's up to the technical communicator to tell the world that we will be okay, we got this. How? By being thorough, thoughtful experts and conveying what's new and what needs to change at the intersection of human communication and technology. For all the tech comm students amongst this audience, this field gives you a start into so many professions. Like my own career keeps showing me, technical communication is versatile as few other areas of study. But what's the big but? University educators and specifically technical communication program chairs and program designers have to pay attention to all of these fields to prepare students for a global job market that constantly evolves. Job roles and responsibilities change. They get reinvented and entirely new ones pop up and appear on the horizon. While fundamentals like rhetoric remains valid, yes, we have to keep understanding the rhetoric, and there's a lot of expertise out there. Delivery channels, however, and technologies will change rapidly. Who knows what we're going to communicate on tomorrow? Who knew 2 years ago that we're going to do this? Expertise in these technologies plus the skills to communicate effectively and purpose-driven will be in absolute demand. So for the above mentioned reasons, faculties and universities have to be extremely diverse in all aspects to help students learn about communication technologies in the future, such as virtual reality, augmented reality, and the rhetoric they require. But here's an important point that while I'm not teaching at a university right now, what I ask of all of you who are teaching, train them in the risk they bear if diversity is neglected. Technical communicators need to be made aware and responsible to ensure that, for example, artificial intelligence works for all and not only for a few, because unintentional bias is everywhere. We don't know, so it's for us, the communicators, to detect it constantly and check everything we do against it. So it's critical to collaborate closely with industry. That's from my perspective as a practitioner, and always having worked with universities in the past, all throughout my career in high tech. We had projects going with different universities and students coming, learning, us going to so there is a very, very close collaboration. Also with governments, the military, regular citizens also, internships in technology companies with corporate communication and digital marketing programs, which some technical writers may not think of as their first idea, but that's what I've experienced. They would offer excellent building blocks for future technical communicators in high-paying jobs, which is also of interest to the field, I would imagine. So universities and their faculties need to strengthen the connection with all players in technology development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for accepting the invitation and for sharing your knowledge and practice experience. And so helpful, I'm sure, for not only for the audience of SIGDOC, but also for university audience, for the world, and also for industry.
Thank you, your participation and your contribution. I think it is really very important. Thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
very welcome. I enjoyed being here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Batista is a technical writer. Well, he's above all a computer science engineer, and he is an ACM senior member, and he is also a technical writer, as professional technical writer for several years, and he is also teaching in a postgraduate course of technical writing. So thank you for your to be here, and I would like to ask the first question. How is your activity related to technical communication or technical writing?
Well, full time since the professional life that I had. So I was at university for some time, but when I left and asked for work, it turned out that the work that was available had to do with technical writing. So I just fell in the profession kind of by mid-chance. So I did buy a few books about it from IEEE. I read them, two of them were pretty good, and I actually used them to start into the profession and then to teach other people as I had to hire them. And at the time in Portugal, technical writing was not really a profession, so you have to convince people that I believe to have the basic skills, that they might have a future as technical writers. It was quite fun sometimes. And I keep going at it. The way I do technical writing, or the problems that faced me, was that I had some kind of complex software object that grew over time. And so it over time gets much and more complex. And you have to grow to match that complexity. So the communication associated with that complex software product has to be more and more complex and sophisticated as well. That was the way in the first company that I was, and I was there for 17 years, so there was a lot of time for the software product to become bigger and more complex over time. And now Farfetch, it's the same thing. It's a company that moves very fast. It has a lot of employees. It has over 1,000 software developers working on their own software. So there is a lot of stuff continually evolving, and that's the challenge to be able to document it in some sensible way. I always consider my job as being a kind of industrial writing. So it's not writing in the small, it's communicating at large, something that is very complex. So that's my engineering background coming forward, and everything else.
Okay. And well, this is almost like a question that it is an entire course, but in few words, what it is your perspective in what concerns the evolution of technical writing, technical communication? Just in few words.
Well, I feel that we as technical writers, we feel a gap between what other professions or professionals did in some product and what the actual final user needs. There's always some gap. Okay, different people believe that they can do perfect products that need no documentation at all. But if the product is complex enough, that's just not true. Okay? You cannot really do a product that is very easy to use and simultaneously covers a large number of use cases for very different people. It's just not really doable, at least not with reasonable resources. And then that's when the technical writers come in. They try to understand the capabilities of that software product, and then try to figure out what are the actual needs of the final user. Of course, other people may have done that, but we match both of them and then cover the ground that is not there. Sometimes it's very little, sometimes it's very large, and we have different ways to cover the ground. And the most interesting of all is to just improve the product such that you do not really need so much documentation. Sometimes you can do that. So if you find some part of the software that is particularly hard to use, sometimes you can suggest ways to improve it that make most of the need for documentation go away.
So yes, I think, and in what extent university education is important in this context? I think that you are already talking some of the needs, but in what extent the university has an important role, or has at least a role to fill this gap? What are the main skills that should be learned and trained at university?
Well, the most important of all is kind of analytical thinking. You are going to explain difficult things, complex things, so you have to be able to understand them. Sometimes even better than the people that created them, which can be amazing. And you can get that on any good university course in the end. So that's why you have so many different backgrounds of people in technical writing, because if you know enough how to think, you are halfway there. Then more specific skills. Of course, the part of writing clearly, which is not really about writing, it's organizing your dots in very clear ways that are easy to follow. It's not really about writing, it's to be able to explain things clearly. And it may not be, again, about writing. You may need to create timing, you may need to do a diagram. I did comics in the past, for instance. It was the solution for the problem that I have. You do whatever makes sense for the user that you are thinking of. And the other part that I feel you need to know is about rhetoric. So how do you put the things in sequence? How do you organize your thoughts so that the whole makes sense? Okay, so not at the sentence level, but how do you decide what goes in a specific page? How do you decide how many pages you should have? Or what should be the organization of each page? And when I talk about page, I can talk about topics. And being able to create a solution for a specific communication problem in a way that you organize your dots in a systematic way that you can then maintain over time, kind of creating a model of the knowledge that you want the user to understand, that's a hard skill, perhaps the hardest of them all. So we have, on one part, you have the part of understanding what is that you need to communicate. There's part of organizing the whole into pieces that make sense, but that the whole also makes sense. And then finally the ability to create each of the pieces to perfection if needed to be, but usually to be good enough, because you usually do not have time for perfection.
Mm-hmm. So you have already taught us some interesting ideas concerning the role of the university, but well, sometimes university also needs to go further, and sometimes it is important to think about the prediction and predict what will be the future. Well, this is quite difficult always, because even those futurists typically they don't they are not right in what concerns the future. But if it is possible to do some prediction, what do you think will be the future of technical writing?
Well, I still see as mostly as a professional learner. You have to keep learning whatever you need, from the product or from the tools that you need to apply. And if there is something that I learned in Portugal on our meetups of technical writings in Lisbon, is that each company has some kind of unique need that comes from their unique product and unique culture that they have to create the product. And so for each company, you have to craft a solution that's very much tailored to those needs. So when you talk me about the future, what I think is whatever it happens to the companies that we work with. So it's not just about us, it's about the whole world. The whole world is evolving. And when the companies evolve, we kind of have to evolve with them. So what you're asking me to, in my point of view, is what is the future of the world? Very hard to predict. Okay. One thing I know for sure is that being able to learn and adapt what you learn to the reality is going to be a major skill. And that's, at the end of the day, it's what you really must teach the students. They have to be able to learn and adapt, to understand what they need, to understand what they need to learn, to be able to learn them effectively, and then apply it. If that's for me the whole point of university education. So if you can do that, they'll survive.
Okay. So thank you very much for your interview.